Imagine this. You're enjoying a peaceful neighborhood barbecue, your disabled child finally smiling after weeks of struggle, when, out of nowhere, a raging HOA Karen storms in, slaps your kid, and screams about meat murder. Yeah, this actually happened to me. And what came next? Oh, Karen had no idea who she was messing with. The smell of sizzling burgers and grilled veggies filled the air. Kids laughed, neighbors chattered, and for the first time in weeks, my son, my disabled, gentle, sweet boy, was smiling. He was enjoying a simple meal at our community barbecue. And then, like a storm on a clear day, she arrived. HOA board member Karen, self-proclaimed protector of the community, stormed in like she owned the place. The moment her eyes landed on my son's plate, her face twisted in disgust. Before I could react, she lunged forward, smacked his plate to the ground, and then slapped my child. The world stopped. People gasped. My son trembled, staring up at her with wide, tear-filled eyes. And that was the moment I knew. This was war. The neighborhood barbecue had been planned for weeks. The HOA had finally approved it after months of arguing over community cleanliness and noise complaints. It was meant to be an event where everyone, regardless of their dietary preferences, could come together and enjoy the afternoon. Burgers, hot dogs, grilled vegetables, and vegan options were all lined up at the buffet table. I had worked hard to prepare my son's meal. His diet was carefully planned due to his medical condition. Certain foods were necessary to maintain his health. He rarely got the chance to play with other kids due to his mobility challenges, so I was relieved to see him laughing with his friends, finally enjoying a moment of normalcy. But HOA Karen was never one to let people enjoy themselves, especially not when she thought she could impose her ridiculous rules on others. Dressed in a stiff, HOA-branded polo shirt and wearing her ever-present scowl, Karen marched toward the barbecue area like a drill sergeant. A few of the more HOA-loyal neighbors nodded in approval, but most people instinctively took a step back. Everyone knew Karen loved controlling the community, and today, she had found her latest target. She circled the food tables like a vulture, eyeing every plate. When she spotted the meat options, she let out a loud, exaggerated gasp. "This is unacceptable. Who authorized the slaughter of innocent animals in our community space?" People exchanged awkward glances. A few rolled their eyes. The barbecue had both vegan and meat options. Nobody was forcing anyone to eat something they didn't want. But Karen wasn't interested in fairness. She wanted control. She zeroed in on my son. My son, blissfully unaware of the looming danger, had just taken a bite of his carefully prepared burger. His condition made eating difficult at times, but today he was doing well. I smiled, relieved. Then came the voice. "What is that child eating?" Karen demanded, her tone dripping with judgment. I turned, already feeling my patience wearing thin. "He's eating what he's supposed to eat, Karen." She wrinkled her nose, staring at the plate as if it were radioactive. "That's disgusting. Feeding a child dead flesh is child abuse. This should be a vegan-only event." A few neighbors muttered their disapproval, but nobody spoke up directly. HOA Karen had a way of making life miserable for anyone who stood against her. I sighed. "Look, Karen, this is a community barbecue. There are vegan options over there. You're welcome to them." I didn't get to finish. With a wild swing, Karen slapped my son's plate out of his hands. It crashed onto the ground, food scattering across the grass. My son flinched, eyes wide with shock. Before I could even react, Karen's hand came down again, this time across his cheek. The moment, everything changed. The entire barbecue went silent. People froze, watching in stunned horror. Even Karen seemed surprised by her own actions, but only for a split second. Then she crossed her arms, staring at me defiantly. "I am protecting him," she said, as if she expected me to thank her. "You should be grateful I stopped you from poisoning your own child." I saw red. I dropped to my son's level, checking his cheek. A red mark was already forming. He wasn't crying. He was too shocked. My heart pounded as I turned to face Karen, my hands shaking with rage. "You just hit my child," I said, my voice dangerously low. Karen scoffed. "Oh, stop being dramatic. I barely touched him. Maybe focus on raising him properly instead of feeding him garbage." The murmurs among the neighbors grew louder. People weren't just shocked anymore. They were angry. Even those who usually sided with Karen were shifting uncomfortably. Then I noticed something important, a game-changing detail. One of the neighborhood kids, standing a few feet away, held up a phone. They were recording. The realization must have hit Karen at the same time. Her face paled, her lips twitched. "You delete that," she snapped, lunging toward the child. But she wasn't fast enough. The kid backed up, grinning. Too late. It's already on the neighborhood group chat. A ripple of excitement and horror passed through the crowd. People were already checking their phones. A few gasps, a few suppressed chuckles. Karen turned back to me, her eyes narrowing. "You have no idea what you've just done." And with that, she stormed off. I exhaled, kneeling next to my son again. "Are you okay?" He nodded slowly, though his hand still touched his cheek. I hugged him, rage still simmering in my chest. Neighbors started approaching, offering their support. A few whispered about filing a complaint. Someone even mentioned the police. But I knew one thing for sure. Karen wasn't done. No, this was just the beginning. She would strike back, and when she did, I'd be ready. The moment Karen stormed off, the tension at the barbecue refused to settle. Conversations buzzed in hushed tones. Neighbors exchanged uneasy glances, and a few pulled out their phones, no doubt forwarding the video to even more people. My son sat quietly beside me, still in shock. His food lay scattered across the ground, an ugly reminder of what had just happened. The red mark on his cheek was fading, but the anger in my chest burned hotter by the second. A neighbor, Mark, stepped forward, his voice low. "Are you calling the cops? Because if you don't, I will." I clenched my jaw. That was the logical move, but deep down, I knew Karen. She was the queen of manipulation. She'd spin this into something else, make herself the victim, and somehow, she'd turn this against me. I needed to be smart about this. "I'll handle it," I said, my voice firm. "But first, let's see what her next move is." Mark frowned but nodded. "We've got your back, man. That was messed up." Several others murmured in agreement. For the first time in a long while, I felt the HOA community, usually divided, usually spineless in the face of Karen's tyranny, actually standing on my side. Then, as if summoned by sheer pettiness, my phone buzzed. A notification from the HOA group chat, the very same one where Karen's slap had just gone viral. I opened it, expecting some kind of defense, maybe an attempt at an apology. But no, Karen wasn't that kind of person. Instead, the message was bold and ridiculous. "Karen, HOA board member, effective immediately, due to health and safety concerns, all meat products are banned from communal spaces. Violators will be subject to HOA fines and disciplinary action." The audacity. I stared at the screen, rereading the message just to confirm that I wasn't hallucinating from sheer rage. A murmur of disbelief spread through the crowd as others checked their phones. "She's serious?" someone asked. "She's actually banning meat because of what just happened?" Mark laughed dryly. "She just hit a kid, got caught on camera, and her response is to double down? Unbelievable." I took a deep breath. Unbelievable? No, predictable. Karen wasn't the type to apologize or admit fault. Instead, she did what she always did. Used her HOA power to try and crush anyone who stood up to her. This wasn't just about meat. This was retaliation, and it wasn't over. The first sign of escalation arrived less than an hour later. Just as I was cleaning up, ensuring my son was calm, I saw them, the HOA enforcers. Two middle-aged men in tucked-in polo shirts, carrying clipboards as if they were about to perform some high-stakes audit, strutted toward the barbecue area with exaggerated authority. I recognized them immediately, Stan and Greg, Karen's favorite yes-men. Stan cleared his throat, his smug expression making it clear he was enjoying this. "We received reports of non-compliant activities at this gathering." I crossed my arms. "Non-compliant." Greg nodded, flipping through his clipboard like he was reading something of actual importance. "Meat consumption in communal areas. As per HOA regulations, that is now banned." "That was literally announced less than an hour ago," I pointed out. "It wasn't a rule when we started." Stan smirked. "Ignorance of the law isn't an excuse." I took a step forward, lowering my voice. "Are you two really going to stand here and defend someone who just hit a child?" That wiped the smirk off Greg's face. Stan, however, didn't falter. "I don't know what you're talking about. What I do know is that this barbecue is in direct violation of HOA regulations. You'll be receiving a fine." Mark stepped in, arms crossed. "You've got to be joking." Stan ignored him, reaching into his clipboard and pulling out a citation notice. He extended it toward me with all the smugness of a man who thought he was untouchable. Here you go. $50 for first-time offenders. I stared at the piece of paper like it was some kind of surreal joke. Karen really thought she could make me the bad guy. I took the fine, ripped it in half, and let the pieces flutter to the ground. Gasps rippled through the small crowd. Stan's eyes widened in disbelief. "Oh, you're going to regret that," he muttered. I smiled. "No, Stan. Karen's the one who's going to regret this." The HOA enforcers left in a huff, but I knew this wasn't the end. Karen had made her move. Now it was my turn. I didn't waste time. I pulled out my phone and sent a message to the HOA chat. Me. Since the HOA is now making up rules to cover up physical assault, I'd like to remind everyone that I have video evidence of today's incident. If anyone would like to join me in officially filing a complaint against Karen, let's talk. Then I waited. The effect was immediate. Several private messages flooded in. Neighbors who had been silent before were suddenly very interested in taking Karen down. And then, the unexpected twist. A message popped up from an unknown number. "Unknown. I have security footage of what happened. Karen doesn't know. Let's talk." My heart pounded. This was bigger than I thought. Someone had caught everything. A second angle, the slap, the threats, Karen's face when she realized she'd been filmed. She thought she had control over the narrative, but now I had something that could bury her. The next morning, I woke up to the sound of pounding on my front door. Not a knock, pounding. The kind that said, "Open up before I break this door down." I already knew who it was before I even checked the peephole. Karen. I took a deep breath, steeling myself for whatever fresh insanity she was about to unleash. When I opened the door, there she stood, arms crossed, lips pursed, eyes burning with entitlement. "You think you're clever?" she hissed. I leaned against the door frame. "Good morning to you too, Karen." She shoved a manila envelope toward me. "You're being sued." I blinked. "Excuse me." Her smile was sickly sweet, the kind that only appeared when she thought she'd won. "You recorded me illegally. That's a crime." I stared at the envelope, unimpressed. "Karen, this isn't a court summons. This is a printed-out HOA violation notice with your handwriting on it." Her eye twitched. "You'll be hearing from my lawyer." "Sure," I said. "What's their name?" "I'd love to talk." She froze, because, of course, she didn't have a lawyer. She was bluffing. I smirked. "Karen, let me explain something to you, real slow. You assaulted my child in front of multiple witnesses, on camera. You don't get to turn this around on me." Her face darkened, and for the first time, I saw it. Fear. For the first time in her HOA reign of terror, she wasn't in control, she was panicking. But Karen wasn't the type to back down gracefully. No, she doubled down. That afternoon, I received an official HOA notice. Violations issued against my name. Public harassment of a board member. $250. Why? $250 fine. Disrupting a community event. $100 fine. Unauthorized recording in a public space. $500. Why? $500 fine. Failure to follow HOA directives regarding dietary rules. $150 fine. Total, $1,000. I let out a laugh. $1,000? This was cartoon villain level of ridiculous. But the kicker? The letter wasn't signed by the HOA president. It was signed by Karen. She had gone completely rogue. And that's when I knew this wasn't just about my son anymore. This was a war. I wasn't about to take this lying down. I grabbed my phone and dialed the actual HOA president, Mr. Lawson. Unlike Karen, he was at least semi-reasonable. He picked up after 2 rings. "Hey, Lawson, quick question. Since when does Karen have the authority to issue personal fines without board approval?" There was a long pause. "She did what?" I smirked. "Yeah, sent me a bill for $1,000. Is that, I don't know, legal?" Lawson let out a long, tired sigh. "I'll look into it." Translation: Karen was about to be in serious trouble. But while I was dealing with Lawson, Karen was busy rallying her minions. A few hours later, HOA enforcers, the same polo-wearing morons from before, showed up at my house. "This is your final warning," Stan said, handing me yet another citation. "This is your final warning," I mocked, snatching it from his hand. "Stan, buddy, do you even know what's happening right now?" Stan shifted uncomfortably. "Karen says." Karen is lying. She's not even legally allowed to issue fines. In fact, if you don't want to be personally liable for harassment, I suggest you step away from this before you get caught up in the mess she's made." Stan's expression wavered. Then Greg, the second enforcer, muttered, "Stan, maybe we should." Stan shook his head furiously. "We have orders from Karen." I folded my arms. "And what happens when the Real HOA board finds out she's been abusing her power?" Greg looked pale. "This isn't our problem, Stan." Stan glared at him, but after a long pause, he turned back to me. "This isn't over," he said, but the confidence in his voice was gone. I smiled. "Oh, trust me, I know." By that evening, things had exploded. The video had spread beyond the HOA group chat. It was now on local Facebook pages. Neighbors who had never dared speak out against Karen were now furious. And then the big moment came. A text from an unknown number. "Unknown. The HOA is holding an emergency meeting. They are investigating Karen." Karen had tried to crush me, but in doing so, she'd signed her own downfall. Because now, she was the one under investigation. The moment the vote was final, a tense silence filled the HOA meeting room. Karen sat frozen in her chair, her mind struggling to process the reality of what had just happened. She wasn't just voted out of the HOA board. She was exposed, humiliated, finished. The very people she had ruled over with an iron fist were now watching her fall. I leaned back in my chair, arms crossed, waiting for the inevitable. I knew Karen well enough to understand one thing. She wasn't going down quietly. And just as expected, she snapped. "This is a witch hunt," she shrieked, slamming her hands on the table. "You're all blind. I did nothing wrong." The board members exchanged glances, a mix of discomfort and disbelief. Mr. Lawson, still rubbing his temples as if trying to ward off a headache, sighed. "Karen, we have video evidence, multiple eyewitness testimonies. You tried to cover up an assault on a child." "I was protecting that child," she screeched, her face red with fury. "Meat is poison. I was saving him from his own ignorant father." My jaw tightened. "You slapped a disabled child. In what world do you think that makes you the good guy?" Karen's lip curled. "Oh, shut up. You don't deserve to live in this community. You're trash. All of you are." She turned to the board members, her voice rising to a hysterical level. "This isn't fair. I gave years of my life to this neighborhood. I cleaned up the streets. I enforced the rules. I kept it safe from people like him." Mr. Lawson pinched the bridge of his nose. "Karen, no. I will not be voted out like this." Karen suddenly grabbed her chair and hurled it across the room. It slammed into the wall with a loud bang. People jumped. Someone in the back let out a nervous laugh. Jesus Christ, Karen was completely unraveling. She turned back to me, pointing a shaking finger. "This is your fault. You set me up." I smirked. "Karen, I didn't make you slap a kid in front of a camera. That was all you." Her nostrils flared. "I'll sue you. I'll take you to court. I'll have you evicted." I let out a low chuckle. "Karen, you're not even on the HOA board anymore. You have no power." Her face turned an ugly shade of purple. She opened her mouth to scream again, but this time, security stepped in. 2 hired guards, men who had been standing quietly in the background up until now, finally approached her. One of them said, "It's time to leave." Karen's head snapped toward them. "Excuse me. You're no longer on the board," the second guard said. "And you just committed property damage. You need to leave." Her chest heaved, her hands clawed at the air. She looked wild, but she must have realized there was no way out of this, because after a long pause, she finally turned toward the door. But just as she reached it, she twisted around and spat. "This isn't over." And then she stormed out. The second the door slammed shut, the entire room erupted. People cheered, some laughed, a couple of HOA members even started clapping. I turned to Mr. Lawson. "Well, that was dramatic." He let out a slow breath. Understatement of the year. One of the board members, a woman who had been silent this whole time, shook her head. "I can't believe we let her run things for so long." "Yeah," another neighbor muttered. "I don't know what's worse, the fact that she did all this or the fact that we all just let her." I shrugged. "Well, at least now you've got a chance to fix things." Lawson nodded. "We'll be revising HOA policies immediately. No more insane fines, no more power trips, no more Karen." That was good enough for me. But Karen's meltdown wasn't just contained to the HOA meeting. By the time I got home, the video of her freakout was already circulating online, and not just in the neighborhood group chat. No. This thing had hit social media. Someone had uploaded it to Facebook and Reddit. A thread on r/entitled People was blowing up. HOA Karen bans meat, slaps a disabled kid, then goes full psycho when she gets caught. The comments were brutal. User 1. This woman is a walking lawsuit. Someone please tell me she's getting arrested. User 2. She threw a chair? Is she okay? User 3. This is the funniest downfall of an HOA Karen I've ever seen. Someone get her a reality show. User 4. Imagine ruining your entire life because you hate cheeseburgers. User 5. So, did she actually get charged with assault? That last question made me pause. Because no, as much as Karen had been exposed, as much as she had been removed from power, she still hadn't faced real consequences. That needed to change. The next morning, I went straight to the police station. I didn't go alone. Several neighbors, including Mark, Greg the ex-HOA enforcer, and even the security guard from the meeting, came with me. We walked in together, presented the video evidence, the witness testimonies, and formally pressed charges: assault, harassment, destruction of property. By the time we left the station, the officer in charge had already made a call. Karen was about to receive a visit, and this time, she wouldn't be able to talk her way out of it. The day after filing the police report, I woke up to a glorious sight. Karen standing on her porch, surrounded by officers. A few neighbors had already gathered, watching from their driveways, whispering excitedly. Some held up their phones, recording. She was yelling, of course. This is insane. I didn't do anything wrong. I am the victim. The officer in charge, who looked like he dealt with way too many Karens in his career, sighed and held out a clipboard. Ma'am, we have multiple witness statements and video evidence of your actions. You're being charged with assault and harassment. You can either come with us peacefully, or... Karen's eyes bulged. I will sue all of you. The officer didn't even flinch. That's nice. Turn around, please. And then, click. The sound of handcuffs. The entire street erupted. Cheers, applause. Someone in the back started playing celebratory music on their Bluetooth speaker. Karen shrieked. You can't do this to me. I am a board member. I am the officer loaded her into the back of the squad car, and just like that, Karen was gone. But the fallout wasn't over. Over the next few days, the neighborhood transformed. With Karen out of the picture, Mr. Lawson and the rest of the HOA board scrambled to fix the mess she had made. Every ridiculous fine she had issued, voided. The meat ban, abolished. The toxic HOA policies, under full review. People celebrated. It was like the community had just been freed from a dictator. And then, the biggest twist of all. I was sitting on my porch, enjoying the peaceful silence, when Greg, the former HOA enforcer, walked up to me. You're not going to believe what I just found out, he said, shaking his head. I raised an eyebrow. What now? He pulled out his phone and handed it to me. I stared at the screen, a bank statement. Karen's bank account? And then Greg scrolled down, revealing thousands of dollars in mysterious withdrawals. Karen was stealing HOA funds. I nearly dropped the phone. She was what? She had access to the HOA's financials, Greg explained. And for years, she's been making community improvement transactions that don't actually exist. She's been pocketing money and covering it up with fake expenses. I let out a low whistle. How much? Greg grinned. Close to 50 grand. I blinked. 50,000. Yep, he chuckled. And guess what? Now that she's been arrested, the board started digging into her finances. They're about to hit her with embezzlement charges. I leaned back in my chair, a slow smile spreading across my face. Karen wasn't just going to jail for assault. She was going to jail for fraud. That night, I received one final HOA announcement. Mr. Lawson, HOA president. Effective immediately, Karen is permanently banned from holding any HOA position. Legal action is being taken regarding missing funds. Additionally, the board is formally apologizing to the community for her past behavior. And then, the best part. Mr. Lawson, HOA president, to celebrate a new beginning for our neighborhood, we will be hosting a community barbecue this weekend. All are welcome, meat included. I laughed out loud. Karen had spent years trying to control this community, trying to enforce her ridiculous rules, trying to make people miserable. And in the end, she had destroyed herself. As for me, I had won. The weekend arrived, and with it, the greatest barbecue this neighborhood had ever seen. The sun was shining, the smell of grilled steaks, burgers, and hot dogs filled the air, and for the first time in years, People actually enjoyed a community event without the fear of HOA fines lurking over them. The best part? Karen's house sat empty. The for sale sign was already up, a quiet monument to her downfall. I couldn't have asked for a better ending. As I flipped burgers on the grill, Mark, my longtime neighbor, strolled over with a beer in hand. I got to say, he mused, taking a sip, I never thought I'd live to see the day when Karen was gone. I chuckled. Neither did I. He smirked. What's next? Running for HOA president. I nearly dropped my spatula. Oh, hell no. Mark burst out laughing. Fair enough, neighbor. My son sat with a few of the neighborhood kids, happily eating his meal without anyone smacking his plate away. Seeing him relaxed and safe made everything worth it. Across the yard, Mr. Lawson, the current HOA president, stood up to make an announcement. First off, he said, clearing his throat, I just want to say, we screwed up. We let Karen get away with way too much for way too long. But thanks to narrator's name, assuming the original prompt wanted the name redacted, leaving it blank or generic like, this resident. Thanks to our neighbor here, and everyone who stood up, this community is finally free of her. Applause erupted. Going forward, he continued, the HOA is going to be fair, transparent, and most importantly, not run by a lunatic. Laughter spread through the crowd. Then, with a mischievous grin, he added, and of course, the meat ban has been permanently abolished. More cheers. I shook my head with a smirk. Never thought banning steak would be the hill she chose to die on. Mark shrugged. People like her don't know when to stop. And that's what made her self-destruct. Later that evening, after the barbecue wound down, I took a moment to sit on my porch and reflect. Karen had spent years terrorizing this neighborhood. She had bullied, fined, and manipulated her way into power. But in the end, her own arrogance destroyed her. She thought she was untouchable. She thought she could get away with slapping a child, issuing fake fines, and stealing from the HOA. But the moment she messed with the wrong person, everything came crashing down. And now, she was facing real consequences. As I sat back, a final message popped up in the HOA group chat. Neighbor 1. Okay, but seriously, who's moving into Karen's house? Neighbor 2. I heard it's a retired firefighter. Super chill dude. Neighbor 3. We should throw a welcome barbecue for him. Neighbor 4. With extra meat, just to spite Karen. Me. I'll bring the burgers.